Chapter 12d. The Kingdom of God is Within You. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by David Shep. The Kingdom of God is Within You by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Constance Garnett. The liberty of man does not consist in the power of acting independently of the progress of life and the influences arising from it, but in the capacity for recognizing and acknowledging the truth revealed to him, and becoming the free and joyful participator in the eternal and infinite work of God. The life of the world, or, on the other hand, for refusing to recognize the truth and so being a miserable and reluctant slave, dragged whither he has no desire to go. Truth not only points out the way along which human life ought to move, but reveals also the only way along which it can move, and therefore all men must willingly or unwillingly move along the way of truth, some spontaneously accomplishing the task set them in life, others submitting involuntarily to the law of life. Man's freedom lies in the power of his choice. This freedom, within these narrow limits, seems so insignificant to men that they do not notice it. Some, the determinists, consider this amount of freedom so trifling that they do not recognize it at all. Others, the champions of complete free will, keep their eyes fixed on their hypothetical free will and neglect this which seemed to them such a trivial degree of freedom. This freedom, confined between the limits of complete ignorance of the truth and a recognition of a part of the truth, seems hardly freedom at all, especially since, whether a man is willing or unwilling to recognize the truth revealed to him, he will be inevitably forced to carry it out in life. A horse harnessed with others to a cart is not free to refrain from moving the cart. If he does not move forward, the cart will knock him down and go on dragging him with it, whether he will or not. But the horse is free to drag the cart himself, or to be dragged with it, and so it is with man. Whether this is a great or small degree of freedom in comparison with the fantastic liberty we should like to have, it is the only freedom that really exists, and in it consists the only happiness attainable by man. And more than that, this freedom is the sole means of accomplishing the divine work of the life of the world. According to Christ's doctrine, the man who sees the significance of life in the domain in which it is not free, in the domain of effects, that is, of acts, has not the true life. According to the Christian doctrine, that man is living in the truth who has transported his life to the domain in which it is free, the domain of causes, that is, the knowledge and recognition, the profession and realization in life of revealed truth. Devoting his life to works with the flesh, a man busies himself with the actions depending on temporary causes outside himself. He himself does nothing really, he merely seems to be doing something. In reality, all the acts which seem to be his are the work of a higher power, and he is not the creator of his own life, but the slave of it. Devoting his life to the recognition and fulfillment of the truth revealed to him, he identifies himself with the source of universal life and accomplishes acts not personal and dependent on conditions of space and time, but acts unconditioned by previous causes, acts which constitute the causes of everything else and have an infinite, unlimited significance. The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. Matt 10.12. It is this violent effort to rise above external conditions to the recognition and realization of truth by which the kingdom of heaven is taken, and it is this effort of violence which must and can be made in our times. Men need only understand this. They need only cease to trouble themselves about the general external conditions in which they are not free, and devote 1/100th part of the energy they waste on those material things to that in which they are free, to the recognition and realization of the truth which is before them, and to the liberation of themselves and others from deception and hypocrisy, and, without effort or conflict, there would be an end at once of the false organization of life which makes men miserable and threatens them with worse calamities in the future. And then the kingdom of God would be realized, or at least that first stage of it, for which men are ready now by the degree of development of their conscience. Just as a single shock may be sufficient, when a liquid is saturated with some salt, to precipitate it at once in crystals, a slight effort may be perhaps all that is needed now, that the truth already revealed to men may gain a mystery over hundreds, thousands, millions of men, that a public opinion consistent with conscience may be established, and through this change of public opinion, the whole order of life may be transformed, and it depends on us to make this effort. Let's stand and accept the Christian truth, which in the most varied forms surrounds us on all sides and forces itself upon us. Let us only cease from lying and pretending that we do not see this truth or wish to realize it, at least in what it demands from us above all else. Only let us accept and boldly profess the truth to which we are called, and we should find at once that hundreds, thousands, millions of men are in the same position as we, that they see truth as we do, and dread, as we do, to stand alone in recognizing it, and like us, are only waiting for others to recognize it also. Only let men cease to be hypocrites, and they would at once see that this cruel social organization, which holds them in bondage and is represented to them as something stable, necessary, and ordained of God, is already tottering and is only propped up by the falsehood of hypocrisy with which we, and others like us, support it. But if this is so, if it is true that it depends on us to break down the existing organization of life, have we the right to destroy it without knowing clearly what we shall set up in its place? What will become of human society when the existing order of things is at an end? What shall we find the other side of the walls of the world we are abandoning? Fear will come upon us, a void, a vast emptiness, freedom. How are we going to go forward, not knowing whither, how face loss, not seeing hope of gain? If Columbus had reasoned thus, he would never have weighed anchor. It was madness to set off upon the ocean, not knowing the route, on the ocean on which no one had sailed, to sail toward a land whose existence was doubtful. But this madness, he discovered a new world. Doubtless, if the peoples of the world could simply transfer themselves from one furnished mansion to another and better one, it would make it much easier. But, unluckily, there is no one to get humanity's new dwelling ready for it. The future is even worse than the ocean. There is nothing there. It will be what men and circumstances make it. If you are content with the old world, try to preserve it. It is very sick and cannot hold out much longer, but if you cannot bear to live in everlasting dissonance between your beliefs and your life, thinking one thing and doing another, get out of the medieval whitened sepulchres and face your fears. I know very well it is not easy. It is not a little thing to cut oneself off from all to which a man has been accustomed from his birth, with which he has grown up to maturity. Men are ready for tremendous sacrifices, but not for those in which life demands of them. Are they ready to sacrifice modern civilization, their manner of life, their religion, the received conventional morality? Are we ready to give up all the results we have attained with such effort, results of which we have been boasting for 3 centuries? To give up every convenience and charm of our existence, to prefer savage youth to the senile decay of civilization, to pull down the palace raised for us by our ancestors only for the pleasure of having a hand in the founding of a new house, which will doubtless be built long after we are gone. Thus wrote, almost half a century ago, the Russian writer who with prophetic insight saw clearly then what even the most unreflecting man sees today. The impossibility, that is, of life continuing on its old basis, and the necessity of establishing new forms of life. It is clear now, from the very simplest, most commonplace point of view, that it is madness to remain under the roof of a building which cannot support its weight, and that we must leave it. And indeed it is difficult to imagine a position more wretched than that of the Christian world today, with its nations armed against one another, with its constantly increasing taxation to maintain its armies, with the hatred of the working class for the rich ever growing more intense, with the Damocles sword of war for heads of all, ready every instant to fall, certain to fall, sooner or later. Hardly could any revolution be more disastrous for the great mass of the population than the present order, or rather disorder, of our life. With its daily sacrifices to exhausting and unnatural toil, to poverty, drunkenness, and profligacy, with all the horrors of the war that is at hand, which will swallow up in 1 year more victims than all the revolutions of the century. What will become of humanity if each of us performs the duty God demands of us through the conscience implanted within us? Will not harm cometh? Being wholly in the power of the Master, I carry out in the workshop erected and directed by him the orders he gives me, strange though they may seem to me who do not know the Master's final aims. But it is not even this question, what will happen, that agitates men when they hesitate to fulfill the Master's will. They are troubled by the question how to live without those habitual conditions of life which we call civilization, culture, art, and science. We feel ourselves all the burdensomeness of life as it is. We see also that this organization of life must inevitably be our ruin, if it continues. At the same time, we want the conditions of our life which arise out of the organization, our civilization, culture, art, and science, to remain intact. It is as though a man living in an old house and suffering from cold and all sorts of inconvenience in it, knowing, too, that it is on the point of falling to pieces, should consent to its being rebuilt, but only on condition that he should not be required to leave it. A condition which is equivalent to refusing to have it rebuilt at all. But what if I leave the house and give up every convenience for a time, and the new house is not built, or is built on a different plan, so that I do not find it the comforts to which I am accustomed? But seeing that the materials and the builders are here, there is very likelihood that our new house will, on the same contrary, be better built than the old one. And at the same time, there is not only the likelihood, but the certainty that the old house will fall down and crush those who remain within it. Whether the old habitual conditions of life are supported, or whether they are abolished and altogether new and better, conditions arise. In any case, there is no doubt we shall be forced to leave the old forms of life which have become impossible and fatal, and must go forward to meet the future. Civilization, art, science, culture will disappear. Yes. But all these we know are only various manifestations of truth, and the change that is before us is only to be made for the sake of a closer attainment and realization of truth. How then can manifestations of truth disappear through our realizing it? These manifestations will be different, higher, better, but they will not cease to be. Only what is false in them will be destroyed. All the truth there was in them will only be stronger and more flourishing. Take thought, O men, and have faith in the gospel, in whose teaching is your happiness. If you do not take thought, you will perish, just as the man perished, slain by Pilate, or crushed by the tower of Salem. As millions of men have perished, slayers and slain, executing and executed, torturers and tortured alike. And as the man foolishly perished, who fills his granaries full, and made ready for a long life, and died the very night that he planned to begin his life. Take thought and have faith in the gospel. Christ said enlightened 100 years ago, and he says it with even greater force now that the calamities foretold by him have come to pass, and the senselessness of our life has reached the furthest point of suffering and madness. After so many centuries of fruitless efforts to make our life secure by the pagan organization of life, it must be evident to everyone that all efforts in that direction only introduce fresh dangers into personal and social life and do not render it more secure in any way. Whatever names we dignify ourselves with, whatever uniforms we wear, whatever priests we anoint ourselves before, however many millions we possess, however many guards are stationed along our road, however many policemen guard our wealth, however many so-called criminals, revolutionists, and anarchists we punish, whatever exploits we have performed, whatever states we have founded, fortresses and towers we may have erected, from Babel to the Eiffel Tower, there are two inevitable conditions of life confronting all of us, which destroy its whole meaning. 1. Death, which may at any moment pounce upon each of us. And 2. The transitoriness of all our works, which so soon pass away and leave no trace. Whatever we may do, found companies, build palaces and monuments, write songs and poems, it is all not for long time. Soon it passes away, leaving no trace, and therefore, however we may conceal it from ourselves, we cannot help seeing that the significance of our life cannot lie in our personal fleshy existence, the prey of incurable suffering and inevitable death, nor in any social institution or organization. Whoever you may be who are reading these lines, think of your position and of your duties. Not of your position as landowner, merchant, judge, emperor, president, minister, priest, soldier, which has been temporarily allotted to you by men, and not of your imaginary duties laid on you by those positions, but of your real position in eternity as a creature who, at the will of someone, has been called out of unconsciousness after an eternity of non-existence, to which you may return at any moment at his will. Think of your duties. Not your supposed duties as a landowner to your estate, as a merchant to your business, as an emperor, minister, or official to the state, but of your real duties, the duties that follow from your real position as a being called into life and endowed with reason and love. Are you doing what he demands of you, who has sent you into the world, and to whom you will soon return? Are you doing what he wills? Are you doing his will when, as a landowner or manufacturer, you rob the poor of the fruits of their toil, basing your life on this plunder of the workers? Or when, as judge or governor, you ill-treat men, sentence them to execution, or when, as soldiers, you prepare for war, kill, and plunder? You will say that the world is so made that this is inevitable, and that you do not do this of your own free will, but because you are forced to do so. But can it be that you have such a strong aversion to men's sufferings, ill-treatment, and murder, that you have such an intense need of love and cooperation with your fellows, that you see clearly that only by the recognition of the equality of all, and by mutual services, can the greatest possible happiness be realized? That your head and your heart The faith you profess, and even science itself, tell you the same thing, and yet that in spite of it all,